Hi everybody, it's Jack Wallen here again, and I want to talk to you about a few things. The first thing I want to mention is that I almost decided to stop doing these videos. And the reason why is, I think, pretty obvious to anybody that's ever done anything like this. These take a lot of time and effort to do. I have to think of a topic, I have to film it, I have to edit it, I have to publish it. And doing those once a week can, they add up. And given the amount of time and effort I put into it versus the amount of people that are actually watching these, it can be kind of frustrating. So at the end of last week, I thought, well, maybe this is it. Maybe the universe is trying to tell me that, you had a good go. And then I realized that there were still people that watched these videos. And if I can help just one person, then these have served a purpose. So I decided that I'm just going to keep plugging away. And if only one person watches these videos, as long as they get something out of it, then I'm okay. I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy helping people. And so there you have it. The next thing I want to say is a little bit better news, is that I finished Violent Delight 6, which is Violent Delight's Deadly Departed. And it is in the hand of the beta readers now. And I'm really excited about it. I'm both excited and sad because I've really, really enjoyed writing this series. But after 6 books, I think it's told its story. And yes, I could go on with it, but I have other things I need to do. But that's not to say that the series is permanently on the shelf. It is possible. I did set it up such that I could come back to it. And if I decide to someday down the line, I will. But here's the other thing. Ending that series led me to what I want to talk about today. Because this was the first time in roughly, 20 years? That I have neared completion of a book or a series and was unsure of what I wanted to write next. Usually, the universe or my muse taps me on the shoulder and says, this is the thing. And I was fairly confident that the universe had told me to go back to the Suicide Station series, and that's what I was planning on doing. But I decided, in my infinite wisdom, that I was going to ask people on social media what kind of books they like to read. And pretty much to a fault, everyone said they liked character-driven stories. And I always love that because, for the most part, with the exception of, I can't even say that. But for the most part, all of my books are character-driven. Because they hinge on relationships and the building of relationships. But that's not to say someone could read one of my books and say, this is more event-driven, like the iZombie series. And I could see why somebody would say that that is event-driven. But most of my other books, the Reaper series, that's character-driven. The Fear series could be either way. I like to think of it as character-driven because it really does focus on the survival of these characters and the evolution of them and their relationships. But in the comments, one person who I greatly respect said that they would love to see me tackle sci-fi. And I have had an idea for a science fiction novel in my to-be-written folder or file for years. And I thought, is that what I want to write? And that led me to this, what I want to talk about today. The 5 questions I ask myself when I'm trying to decide what to write next, or the 5 questions I ask myself when I'm trying to figure out if a particular story is worth my time to write. And I'm going to share with you those 5 questions. They're very simple, very straightforward questions. Now, granted, some of them might only apply to me or people that kind of follow my same intentions with the written word, but needless to say, I think that any writer, whether you are a novelist or a screenwriter, a script writer, a playwright, whatever, I think that these questions will help you decide if that idea that you have mulling around in your head is something you should write. Question number 1. Does it excite me? It has to excite me. It absolutely has to grip me by the heart and the mind and say, yes, this is something you need to write. I had a director once, a long, long time ago, Moses Goldberg, who was the father of children's theater in the United States. It was one of my first years as a member of the rep company with Stage One. And his best advice for the actors in that company were that if you're not having fun on stage, the audience is not going to have any fun. And that really resonated with me. And I've carried it with me throughout my artistic life. And it doesn't necessarily have to just be fun. If you're not enjoying something, if you're not excited about something, if I'm not excited about a book that I'm writing, I know that anyone who reads it will not be excited about reading it. They just won't. So when I think about an idea for a book, it has to excite me. Question number 2. Has the story been told before? And if so, how could mine be different? Now I have a great example of that, and I have actually talked about it before. When I first came up with the idea for A Tale of Two Reapers, when I first came up with this idea, I set it aside, and I kept thinking about it. And I was like, why does this sound familiar? And then I realized it was Death Takes a Holiday. And that's a great story. That's a great movie. And I really wanted to tell the story, so I had to come up with a way that differentiated my story from that. Because if I just wrote the story that I came up with, people would say, hey, I know that. I know that story. That's something I've seen before. So if the story has been told before, if you're sure that the story has been told before, and the story still excites you, what can you do to that idea to make it your own? To differentiate it from the thing that you think that it is similar to. Okay, the next one is personal to me. Is the story viable as a full-length novel? I understand the love of the short story from both a writer and a reader perspective. A short story is a great way to introduce yourself to a writer, or to write a story that you know is good but cannot be fleshed out into a full-length novel. But for me, I need that full-length novel. I need that time and space to be able to truly flesh out characters and relationships and story arcs and all of that. And although I have written plenty of short stories and flash fiction, I much prefer full-length novels. And part of it is practical. I want to give the reader something that they feel that their $2.99 was worth. You know, I don't want them to pay $2.99 for a story and go, well, that was too short or whatever. And I know the whole time I'm saying this, I'm thinking $2.99. And I'm spending months and months working on these books and sweating blood and tears getting them done and wringing my hands over them. And I'm selling them for $2.99. And I'm wondering, is it worth it? And then I look at other novels and I see the ebooks selling for $15 and I think, well, Okay, I get it. Sort of, not. Anyway, and related to that question, the fourth question is it a one off or a series? Here's my take on that. I do prefer writing series. And the reason being is that I can explore the characters and the universe and the story arcs further with a series. And I think that a series is more appealing to people. It's like, here's a great analogy. My wife and I will be sitting in the TV room trying to find something to watch. And we really like watching television series. We just binged Dexter again. Love that show. But if we're scrolling through Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or whatever, and we see a series that might sound interesting from like 2019, but it only got one season, my thought is, why bother? And that's the way I think that a lot of readers approach books. If it's a series, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I can really invest in this. But if it's a one-off, they might not be so inclined to invest in it. The difference is, however, there is a caveat to that. Sometimes I'll come up with an idea for a story, and I know immediately that it's a one-off. And a great example of that is Defying Gravity. When I wrote Defying Gravity, eventually, I mean, while the editing process was going on, I was toying with the idea of making it a series. So the first book was the character in Cabaret, and I thought the next series would be another actor in Sweeney Todd, and the next series would be an actor in Amadeus or whatever, and it could go on and on and on. But then I started thinking, and I had some discussions with my editor, and I realized that the power of that book would be, and the impact of that book would be watered down if it became a series. So I decided, let's leave that one alone as a one-off, because it is compact, it stands alone, and it doesn't need any more story to be told. And I feel like if I were to keep going with that, I would have been doing the original story a disservice. Okay, the final one is, and this one is really important to me, and I know that it's not so important to other writers, but is there a message in the story that I think needs to be shared? I don't like to write books that don't have some sort of message. That even no matter how small the message is, or how little of an impact the message might have, but I always feel it is my duty to try to impart something, to try to say something with this story, because that's important to me. And when I'm reading something, if I start to catch what the writer is trying to say in the subtext, trying to when I finally see what their message is with the story, it really excites me. And I love when writers do that. I love it when a television show does that. I love metaphor and subtext, and I personally feel like it is an artist's responsibility to try to share with the world the things, something of importance, to try to say something with the story or the characters. And if I come up with an idea for a book, and the more as I think about it, if I cannot devise some sort of message, if I cannot find a message in the narrative, then I'm probably going to chuck that idea, or I'm going to hold off on it until I can devise some sort of message, to something to say with the story. Because I just don't like, I always, here's what I think. I feel like, and this is just me, this is just my personal opinion, so please don't, this is not fact in any way, shape, or form, but I feel like when a book doesn't have a message, it rings hollow. And I don't want to deliver hollow stories. I want there to be depth and importance to them. Even something like A Tale of Two Reapers, which or Suicide Station, which is all about how the death of a relationship, that's a metaphor there, the death of a relationship doesn't mean the death of love. So those are the 5 questions I always ask myself when I'm trying to decide if I want to write a book. So when when the person asked me, mentioned that they would love to see me write a sci-fi novel, I revisited that idea for this sci-fi novel that I have, and I applied those questions to it. And immediately I was like, yes, this is what I've got to write next, because I got really excited about it and it checked all the boxes of those questions. So I would challenge you, whatever type of thing you write, if you're about to take on something new, ask those questions of yourself in regards to the idea that you have. And if that idea passes muster with those questions, then you know that that's what you should write next. It can really be that simple, especially when you have a to be written file that is gigantic like mine. And you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, all these ideas, I love all these ideas, but which one is next? If the universe, the muse isn't telling you, then you're going to have to answer the question yourself. So use these 5 questions and you'll be okay. And that's all I have today, ladies and gentlemen. And I am going to keep on filming these videos because I know that there's at least one person out there that gets something from them. And that's enough for me. Thank you so very much for giving me your precious time and attention, because I know how busy you are, and I know how much content there is out there here on YouTube land that you could just doom scroll all day and find something new and fresh you want to watch. And for whatever reason, you landed on this and decided you wanted to stare at this goofy face for a few minutes. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. And I hope that you and everyone you love have a wonderful, wonderful day.